Thank you so much, Mr. Balaji, for joining us on a podcast at Dawdle. Extremely grateful that you took out time out of your busy schedule to share your insights and experiences with our global audience. Dawdle is now truly global with over 100,000 plus CXOs subscribed to our email newsletters and WhatsApp groups. We have a few topics on which we would like to have your insights on. But before we go there, sir, would be great if you could take us to your journey so far to give a good context to our audience.
Sure. Thanks, Rishikesh. And thanks to all the people who are following and watching Dawdle. And thanks for having me. It's exciting to share my journey. So I started my career almost 3 decades ago now. I started my career as a clerical staff with HSBC. I come from a uh, science plus commerce background. My graduation in science, I was parallelly pursuing cost and work accountancy. Banking was a choice at that particular point of time. That was a time when the entire banking industry was going through a transformation and private sector banks were actually starting as well. So after a brief 1.5 years, less than 2 years with HSBC, I joined HDFC Bank. And I would say that I owe most of my career to the foundation laid at HSBC and then what I learned through HDFC Bank. The initial days were a lot of fun. Sky was the limit. We could do anything that we wanted if we had the right attitude and if we are willing to learn. And that is probably the mantra which I follow even now. It's just a question of making sure that you have the right intent and the right attitude that will take you to places. And after that, I moved into other multinational corporations, worked in places outside of India for a few years, then came back to India with another startup bank, as bank, and where I also learned a lot of good things, but also there were a few things which I learned which was not so good, and probably that's another big learning as well. Then moved into the technology industry. From being in the accounting world and product world to getting into technology was a really enriching experience for me as well. So almost 17 years or 16 years now at tech services and now engineering services as well. So been a fantastic, exciting journey. Multiple places, multiple organizations, great people whom we have worked with. I would say that I really don't have any regrets, and if I were to look back, it's been a phenomenal amount of learning. And I have a standard phrase that I use whenever people ask me how am I doing. I only say can't be better. Every day is different, and every day is a day of learning and enrichment. That's what excites me as well.
Thank you so much, sir, for this inspiring journey that you have. Truly an inspiration for a lot of young people who are kind of working in the organizations in the initial ages. You started very simple and you rose up the ladder and you grew up to become something and contributing immensely to the entire ecosystem. Sir, you have led organizations across banking, payments, outsourcing, and engineering. We want to understand that what are those key leadership lessons that has stayed consistent across these industries?
I would say two parts to the, particularly in a services industry, you're as good as your team. You're as good as your people whom you're working with. Because I never use the terminology of saying people who work for you or work under you, because end of the day, all of us are, pursuing the same mission, and it's just that first among equals rather than anything else. And that is what has stayed with me. Treat the people the way you'd like to get treated. Because that I've said multiple times in other engagements that I've dealt as well. So, and if you give, the space, you open to listening, and if you're not pushing back on ideas which doesn't necessarily align with what you have, I think that is what probably would be the most important lesson that I learned, irrespective of whether it's banking, financial services, or technology industry. If you know what is your customer's problem and what your teams want to do, and if you align with that aspiration and attitude, I think things will fall into place. Respect, humility, equality, and equity. I think that's probably the four important lessons that I learned. The last, and probably not the least, and probably would be this to everybody who is listening in, is the courage, ready to take the risks, because the downside of not doing anything is much more than doing something. And even I don't think I got everything right, but as long as you're getting 90% right, then I think you're doing something.
Thank you so much, sir. And while you are scaling the organization to thousands of people, and you have done it for your organization as well, what are the challenges do leaders face because they have to make sure that there is agility and innovation is not compromised on?
I think it's the question of like what I said. One is to make sure that you hire the right people, and more than the skill, which I think is something which we will always be able to teach. The attitude and the will is probably going to be the most important element. It's the question of the hunger to solve the customer's problem or focus on what the customers want and what your team wants is probably the crucial one. And the agility is primarily comes from empowering the team to take the decisions, and if sometimes if the decisions are not right, to back them up as well. And of course we need to be very very clear on what's the boundaries and to what extent. One of my ex-bosses, in Concentrix, right from day one, and he's still a big inspiration for me in terms of messaging. He used to say, fail fast, fail cheap. It's the question of if you're taking a decision, you need to have enough checkpoints to see how that decision is turning out to be and making sure that it doesn't take you along with the entire team and the organization down. I think that's probably crucial if you want to scale and give that flexibility and freedom for people to take the decision rather than looking over their shoulder, forever.
And so it becomes very, very crucial to define the right leadership in place, like while you are scaling.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can't agree with you more because like what I mentioned, the leader is only as good as the team that you've got, and at every level and at every decision making point, it's the question of how agile that person is and how customer focused that person is. Because if you start looking at only covering only your base and not
Yes.
look at the entire organization, it'll always be a challenge if you want to scale. Having the right people, we're not obviously, we're not a psychologist, and you can't really judge everybody just based on looking at them. But if you look at the right attitude and you give them the right tools to operate, I think that's probably the most crucial element. And when I say leadership, it's not just the next level of leadership. It's across everybody who's actually facing the customer, everybody who's facing the market, and your team member. They should all have that agility and the focus and attitude and the belief in the vision and mission which the organization is standing.
So sometimes what I feel is that leaders also fail to communicate properly this mission and vision, and that is where the misalignment happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I would say more often than not, that is where the challenge is, because sometimes we probably mistake the numbers to be the vision and mission. We just talk about what is the revenue and what is the headcount and what is the margin or what is the profit, rather than looking at the purpose of the entire business and what you want to do. And if you don't communicate that well enough and you don't keep an open door and make sure that you are ready to answer questions, because you should be ready to listen to people and who are not either understanding what your mission vision is, or people who are questioning your mission. People who should who should question you. You should be able to give them a convincing answer. Once again, I by what one of my earlier bosses used to say, that if you can't explain it to a 10-year-old, then you can't explain it to anybody else. That vision and mission will have to have that level of clarity of what you want to achieve. If you have a very convoluted answer for mission and vision, then obviously it means that we ourselves are not clear. That communication is the essential, and people should have the trust in you. That piece around making sure that you are living that principle and that culture and the mission and vision is going to be equally.
So we'll come to the BFSI and payments segment. So you have invested quite a significant amount of time in cards, internet
And
banking.
money as well.
Yes. So how do you see the payment ecosystem evolving in the next 5 years?
I would say that if there is right from our uh, politicians to industrialists to everybody, if you were to look at India as a payment hub and what we have achieved in the last 15 years or so, I don't think anybody has simplified payment and made it so easy, cheap, and I would say the only thing which that is still questionable is the security element, the ease and the cost of managing payment, and the kind of user intuitive payment application that are being built. I think we are probably at the forefront. I don't think there is anybody else who. And this area, I think we can probably try and say that we can certainly be compared with China as well. All the others, we try to compare ourselves only for the sake of it. The numbers don't say it, but in this, we can certainly say that it's comparable. I would say that no, if we probably have more examples outside of payment for the country's progress, it would be even better, and we'll probably be in a different league right now. But payment, I think, has been a cornerstone, and the entire mechanism, right from how UIDAI was used and how mobile as an instrument has been used and how to make it so easy and so convenient. I think it's probably the biggest innovation, at least we can claim ourselves to. I don't know whether we are the first movers, but we certainly are the first adopters. It has evolved, at least in the retail side. In the business side, I think we still have a long way to go, primarily because of our own restrictions of cross-border transactions and other stuff. But at least in the retail segment, touching every other citizen of the country and making it easier for them, I think I think is the biggest achievement, at least in the last decade, I would say, and probably would be the biggest achievement, top three achievements in this century, at least for India. I would say that the only thing which I'm still a little skeptical, particularly when you have senior citizens at home and have the vulnerable at home, is the security element and the amount of frauds that are actually crept into the. I think that's the price that you pay, but it's easier for people like me to say that the price to pay, but it's only the people who have actually paid the price who will know how much they have lost, and that's certainly is a big worrying element which needs to be solved. But there is no easy answer to it because we have grown so rapidly, we can't move out of it. And this current stage, I think that's where the biggest challenge that we have, at least for that.
So why only payments has seen such kind of in India? Why not the other industries? Like,
I would say that was a problem that people were trying to solve. I think the biggest problem that people were trying to solve was how do you reduce corruption, bring in more transparency, and digital payments was probably the most easiest element for that. And I don't know whether it has really reduced in unaccounted money. At least it has eased the life of people to a large extent. I think the need was coming in from how do we make everything accessible? How do you bring in the retail revolution? And the retail revolution comes with the payment revolution because
yes,
if you were to look at the consumption rates with what we are running right now and now our reduced dependency on the global fluctuations is primarily because of our domestic consumption. If you were to look at all those, the need was seen. This was probably relatively easier, and that too we had the platform of UIDI, even though it was originally not created for this, to try and bring in that element of identity along with security, along with payment, certainly helped to a great extent. And all the others, I think the problem that we have is India as a country, we don't really invest in R&D.
yes.
There's hardly anything on research and development per se. And the private sector participation is mostly on, even including the industry that I come from, which is tech and services industry. It's primarily around how do you get work from somewhere else and do the work here rather than trying and building anything credible per se. And I think that is the reason why we haven't really seen big innovation coming in from anywhere else and big earth-shattering innovation. I wouldn't say that no, we are not innovating at all. I'm sure that there is a lot of micro innovations, there are a lot of improvements that are actually happening. But there isn't really anything which we can top of the mind recall if I were to
Yes.
compare it with what you see across the globe. And that also shows in the number of patents that we apply for IPs. We don't apply for even our own other IPs, which are credible IPs of what we have as part of our culture itself. But I think there was really no understanding, and that is where probably being isolated from the rest of the world, whether it is in terms of practices and culture and the lifestyle and other stuff, also impacts us. We are one of those kaam chalao kind of stuff. It's a jugaad, kaam chalao. We survive with anything. There is always this factor of as long as you survive, it's good enough. That attitude also doesn't help beyond a certain stage.
And thanks to the great population that we have.
Ideally, it is now proving to be a positive factor from a consumption and economy
Yes.
perspective, but not so much on innovation.
Sometimes I think that India is having the GDP growth is mostly driven by the population rather.
And the per capita income is actually, even though, we all know what
Mm.
we need to get to by 2047 or 2050. Because if we don't get there, and if we still languor in the less than $15,000 per capita, even after 2050, we are going to have a struggle because our aging population and with that, the cost of Medicare and not having enough social security, all those will come back to bite us in the next generation. Maybe I may not live to see that, but my children will, and their children will.
So related to this, what do you feel are the biggest opportunities for digital transformation in banking and financial services?
I would say that while privatization of banking was a big revolution which happened in the early 90s, which actually made it possible for the private banks and in partnership with international companies digitizing our world. But our challenge is the penetration cost at which these services come to us, and the ability for apart from the top 5 to 10% of the population to enjoy or utilize these services, and what comes along with it for their development is probably the biggest challenge that I see. Whether it's on credit or whether it's on how do you utilize that particular credit? There is really no way of trying and mapping all this, because while payment is fully digitized, we really can't figure out. Somebody is taking for sure. These are the headlines that you see every other week, every other month, of people siphoning off big loans which they have taken for a certain purpose but not getting used for that particular purpose, and those coming out after years together with so many digital channels and the ability to track the monies. It's surprising that we are not able to do it, and that is because either we are not looking at the right things, or we are probably not looking at the right things at the right time. I think that is where the biggest opportunity set is. How do we make sure that this trillions of dollars and the crores and crores of rupees which are lying, which are being given as a credit, is actually being utilized, in the right way and is going into the right hands. You probably would have seen enough of Bollywood and Tollywood and Collywood movies of how people take the loan, and everybody talks about people who have taken a 10,000 crore loan and is able to escape, but a guy who takes a 10,000 loan is getting caught and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, all these are coming back to that, how do you map the data, the evidence that you have, which as of now, we know everything. If I were to go to my phone company, I'm sure that they know every damn thing that I do. And I'm sitting in front of my TV, whether I'm switching on the TV or not, the Alexas and the Googles know what I'm doing. So that data is available, but despite that, we are not utilizing it in the right way. I think that's where the biggest opportunities are.
So I think it requires a lot of mindset shift, because you rightly pointed out that 10,000 crore was not paid, but the 10,000 rupees person is behind the bars.
Yeah.
And it's valid in most of the cases, sir. What I feel is that wherever the meritocracy is not there in India, people try to, kind of circumvent it in some way or the other for their own purposes.
I wouldn't say it is only in India, it is there in other places as well. But in ours, it is even more prominent because we are not looking at the right information, the right set of data. How do you analyze that particular data? All this information is available. If you go to RBI's website and start looking at the credit distribution and deposit distribution, and all this information is available at a macro level. And for you to get that macro level information, you need to have the micro level information.
Yes.
But how is it being utilized is a question mark. And whether we like it or not, it's a question of people
Intent
need
of,
to see this as a purpose, because if profit
yes,
is the only purpose,
yes,
then it doesn't really make any difference. As long as you're making the money, you don't really bother about any of these. So if my bank is making reasonably good return on investment, why would I be bothered as to whether they are writing off 50,000 crores in a year? Or
that kind of gives a lot of people incentive to, criminalize.
absolutely, absolutely. See, the entire you know. This entire scamming of people through this, whether it's digital arrest or the card frauds and all those elements, you bring in an OTP and people are able to clone that as well. So the criminals are always, so there is an industry which is actually thriving on this, of just trying to figure out how to scam people.
Yeah.
If that industry is thriving, and if they are making 100,000 crores, 200,000 crores in a year in that industry, which is probably much bigger than some of the other retail industries. You will have enough people who I wouldn't be surprised if there are schools and institutions where it's only teaching this.
Yes. Sir, I kind of keep on, hearing about these things, especially in the fintech industry as well. There were a few guys, whom I was talking to, and they were like, unofficially, they told that 90% of them are breaking some compliances, breaking some regulation at the back end. And that's how they are making money.
I think one part is that just like how we have our Indian Penal Code and the entire laws which were probably were done 100 years ago, and many of them, even though they have been reworded, but they have not really changed.
Mm.
So we also need to define what compliance means. Because if I were to look at saying that for me, if I have to go and redeem my insurance policy at this particular point, do a fund transfer from my account, and if the amount is say 50,000 rupees or 100,000 rupees or whatever it is, everybody knows you're genuine. Everybody knows that you have a certain history that you've built. Even for my own bank, every time I go, they ask for the same KYC again and again for the same transaction. If I'm doing it to 1 month down the line, when they have actually seen me doing the transaction in the past, why are they asking? So if the compliance requirement is so onerous, you will have people trying to break it. That is where the regulators and in our criminal justice system, are even though you are normally meant to be, not guilty till you're convicted. Everybody looks at you only as a criminal first.
Yes.
So while probably you have 1% or 2% of the population who may probably have a criminal intent, remaining 98% actually pay the price for those 2%. And the compliance requirement, if it becomes onerous, and look at the number of times you have to share your PAN and Aadhaar and your ID documents to every other agency that you work with. You take a forex card, you take a forex, and you're traveling abroad, you need to give that information.
Yes.
You go to a bank and you want to do a fund transfer of beyond 5 lakhs, then you need to give this information. Everywhere, it's like you're doling out your PAN cards and Aadhaar cards like as if it's some candies. If the identity is being shared with such level of ease, people will do identity theft. We're not calling identity theft as a big element here, but every other digital fraud is actually an identity theft. So why do you need to share all this information at all when everything is digitized, everything is available centrally? Why do we need to even provide this information? As long as you're quoting the number, it's good enough. Now, by trying and saying that no, not the entire number will be given, only the last 4 digits of the card number is here, would say that every other guy, even my Uber driver, would probably know my full 16 digit.
Yes.
So we are relying mostly on data and information that is available freely, and we are putting compensatory controls by OTP and other stuff, which is hardly a control. Started off 10 years back, OTP would have probably been a good one, but now OTP is the most easiest thing which people can find out. And you don't need a tech genius to do it. You probably have people in some of the villages who will probably know how to crack it.
They have their all set up in the villages itself, sir.
Absolutely. All you need is a high-end laptop and with some internet
Yes.
connect.
Yes. And a database of people who are susceptible. Sir, you have led organizations which specialize in quality assurance and automation. How critical are QA and DevOps at enabling faster and safer digital transformation?
I think a product well built, is probably the most important element, and the quality assurance plays a huge role there. In that, if you don't get it first time right, particularly in the products that we are talking about in the financial services part, and now more so when I'm working now with the engineering teams and what we are doing in the engineering side and looking at the quality as an this one, just a simple thing. Now, the last 7 years after I've started working in the engineering industry, if I were to look at it, 99.999%, which is what even in the financial services, which we think is good enough, certainly not good enough. If you are anything less than 100%, it's just not good enough. So when we are saying 99.999%, it basically means that there will probably be 100,000 payment transactions in a day which can go wrong. You could actually have 20 air crashes in a day. You could have so many kids who are gone to a different mother. If you were to look at that 99.999%. So quality assurance, I think, is probably the most paramount, and I think that is one element which I've seen, which it has changed a significant amount, with the continuous product development and this QA and DevOps working together and not differentiating between the two, but still a long way to go. That's one area where is the least amount of investment. If you look at a product development life cycle, people would say that anywhere between 7 to 8% is what they would like to spend on quality assurance. The expectation is that the person who is developing it should have actually done the product at a 99% level. In reality, if you look at testing and when you go through the process, I have not seen any, even in the test of the products, coming out at anything less than 60-70% accuracy level when you start, and then you do multiple rounds of testing and building the resilience before it gets launched, and sometimes it gets launched even at a 99% level. At 99%, I would say that it is certainly a risk, and the risk is of the customer rather than yours. And I would say quality assurance is a very, very important element, and the companies which have actually considered that to be of the most paramount importance are coming out with the best of the products. Where we cut corners, you would know, those products will not scale. DevOps, I think, is a necessary reality nowadays, because gone are the days where every other product life cycle runs for years together. If you want to do, if you want to hit the market quickly with the kind of cutthroat competition that we have, and there is, the uh, for the next person to catch up on whatever innovation that you are bringing in is anywhere between 3 months to 1 year. And if you don't get this thing out as fast as possible with an integrated QA and DevOps, and what we call it as the CI/CD kind of, it's going to be, there's it'll always be a challenge to bring in any innovation or any transformation.
And so also related to this hyper automation and AI, these are the buzzwords today. So from your perspective, where do they deliver a real business impact versus just a hype?
Yeah, I would say that for AI to be effective, the data is of paramount, and with the level of data that the organization maintain, and how effective it is, and how you are actually looking at it, making sure that you're looking at the right data, irrespective of whatever you do, the same data is available in multiple places. Which is the true instance of the data? How do you make sure that you're actually looking at it, looking at the right information, and how do you tag each field and figuring out what exactly the meaning of that particular area is going to be important. And if that information is not available, doing POCs with whatever limited data that is available and turning out saying that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and this is what is going to come with AI. And AI will, because we also have this piece of saying that no, AI and automation are not the same. In my opinion, automation is, if you have, it's like the muscle memory. So if you have something which you know for a fact that this has to be done by muscle memory, then you can automate it.
Right, sir.
But that and AI is not the same. AI is, you bring in intelligence.
Yes.
Automating a process and, identifying data and intelligently interpreting the data, and, forecasting what is going to happen next, how it is going to happen, and seasonality versus time of the day, and all those kind of stuff. That's pure artificial intelligence. That is going to, I would say that, yeah, there are lots of use cases, but how many of them are successful is actually, I would say that, anybody's guess. I would not really put my bets on that at this particular point. Automation, of course, is very important, and it's been going on for more than two and a half decades now. Process automation is a necessity. You need to improvise. You need to automate mundane things so that people can start doing more important things, and something which will require some intuitiveness. But I'm not sure as to when artificial intelligence will replace humanity. Automation can replace your muscle memory, but the AI is, I would say that at this particular point of time, there are certainly a lot of good things which are actually happening through that. But how much of it is going to be really transforming, which is going to scale, which is going to probably get to the next level, is something which we need to figure out. And for that, most crucial element is making sure that we have the right data, you have the right governance around the data, you need to have the right level of accesses and interpretation of.
That is true,
But
sir.
it's certainly an in thing for the future. It's going to transform over the next decade or so. But for that, the most important element is to lay the right foundation. Some of them are doing it. Some of them are probably trying and shortcutting it to some extent.
And sometimes what I feel is that, sir, organizations have wrong processes in place and then they try to automate wrong processes that leads to a bigger vicious circle.
Yeah, I know. That is, it's always, I've seen at least in the last 2 decades of trying and doing automation as part of the process. One thing which we figured out, in some cases, it's better to correct the process and then automate. In some cases where there is really no, so for example, if it is scanning, if there is a good OCR software that is available, you just scan. Don't really bother about what is the sequence and how you do it and other stuff. In some cases, trying and automating and, doing two transactions together just to, see which one is probably the most accurate one and then taking that one. It's, in my opinion, it's a waste of time, effort. I would say 90% of the cases, ideally, you need to fix the process before you automate. But there are some exceptions where you could just automate anything that one which if it is a very very simple and large volume.
So it's first the mindset, then a skill set, then AI.
And mindset, skill set, having the right information, and then AI.
So within the industries like, you have automotive, aerospace, and healthcare. How important is engineering services in driving the next generation innovations like digital twins or Industry 4.0?
Now that is what our role is. That's what we are betting on for now and for the future as well. Because it's when 3D printing came in, nobody thought that it's going to actually revolutionize what we are doing. Within the engineer. Digital twin, the ability for you to actually understand the machine's behavior, the entire output behavior using those digital twin is like phenomenal. I would say that if I were to look at what we are spending our time and effort on, it's around engineering design is obviously the core for everything. And how do you make sure that you are able to replicate a success in what you're doing, into the same success into multiple industries and multiple designs that you're doing is, I would say that for us, engineering design combined with automation or IoT along with digital twin. That's where we are spending most of the effort on. While we keep saying Industry 4.0, 5.0, I think as of now, the data around what the machines do, how the machines react, and what kind of designs optimize them, that's where most of our investments are going as well. And that's where we are deploying our human intelligence along with artificial.
And so, if you talk about consulting-led delivery, it's gaining momentum, especially the experts-led consulting, not the generic consulting, which a lot of companies do. So how do you balance deep domain expertise with the agility in execution?
So it's a combination. I would say if you don't know the customer's business, then you don't really have any authority to go and tell them what uh, transformation that you're going to run for them. So it's extremely important that you know the customer business, but you don't teach the customer how to do their business either. Knowing the customer's business, that is when you'll probably appreciate the problems that they are facing and what exactly are the challenges which you are trying to resolve. Because gone are the days where you wait for the customer to tell you what the problem is and then you try and solve for it, because it's not like you tell me what to do, I will do it. If you go with that as a service organization, more often than not the customer would actually be able to find 10 other people who will probably be able to do the same thing as well. If they have to be there in every step when the problem is getting solved, then the expertise that we have as having worked with multiple companies within the same industry, we don't bring in any value. So that is where I think consulting will have to be based on experience and real life challenges and how you're going to solve the real life challenge. You're not going to be telling them what to do, or you don't give them a gyan of saying that these are the problems and you can solve it in 10 different ways. It has to be something which is relevant for your customer and how you're going to solve it as well. And that's where the consulting led delivery comes in. And I would say that at least the time that I have been here in this industry for the last 15 years, that is how the customers have respect for you and the work that you do. And that is what brings you more business.
Right. And so you have managed delivery across multiple countries and cultures. So what are the keys to maintaining consistency while also adapting to the local contexts?
Yeah, I think it's the question of trying and driving the right metrics. You know what exactly you need for the business, irrespective of whether you are sitting in India or you're sitting in US or sitting in Philippines. At the end of the day, the business is driven by the metrics. As long as you define the right metrics and you measure them in the right way, and when you're dealing with people, is when you need to bring in that particular local content. How do you reward? How do you recognize? How do you give a pat on the back? How do you understand uh, the methodologies of those achievements? This would probably be different, and I would say 80% to 85% would be based on defining the right metrics which are relevant for the. And that's when the teams also think that they are integrated. If you have different metrics for different countries, then the teams also don't think. One of them will probably think that they are doing much more than what the others are doing. I think it's the metrics which will define that. And the remaining 15%, 10% is where is the human element of how do you manage the achievement or non-achievement or overachievement.
Now, towards the end of the podcast, so we have two questions left. One is, what emerging technologies do you believe will reshape both BFSI and engineering services in the next decade?
I would, I think we've touched upon this. How do you data being the most important layer. And we have been saying this, that data is the next fuel for more than 2 decades now. To make sure that it is given the right level of the importance and try and democratize it to a certain extent. Based on that, the ensuring that we get the right value and the hyper personalization, which everybody talks about, right? Saying that how do I know that if I have been banking with somebody or if I have been using a certain car, how do I know that that car company or my bank knows me well? If they start treating me like anybody else, then what's the big deal?
Yes.
That data, the intuition, getting the benefit out of that particular data, both for hyper personalization and for increased efficiency. I think that is where it's going to be, and that is applicable for whether it's services or whether it's the manufacturing or the engineering.
And at last, finally, what advice would you give to future leaders aiming to bridge business and technology at a scale?
I think I don't think I'm qualified enough to say that, but because each situation is different. But based on my own personal experience, I would say that humility, ability to listen, and making sure that you learn, from both from your customers or your teams is probably going to be the most important element. If we as leaders, or we need to be a catalyst. You are going to be, if you think that you are the person who is running it, or if you are thinking that you are the Hercules, then your shoulders are about to crack. So how do you make sure that you do that? Is probably going to be the crucial element.
Thank you so much for taking out time.
Cheers, bye.